In the response that we've got actually to the amount of people involving dogs, dog attacks, fear of dogs, phobia. Are phobias something that you deal with on a daily basis? Do you see a lot of phobias of various forms?
Yeah, and I suppose it's like anything. Phobias are something that we're not born with. That's the first thing I think we have to understand. Fears are something that we learn. And we can only have a fear of something if we perceive it to be dangerous or if we have had an experience. So it all comes back to the childhood experience, so the child that might have been just about to crawl, for example, at home, is suddenly exposed to something like a Labrador or something and sees this big animal or whatever type of a dog. So they perceive that in a fearful way. So we grow up with that, and then suddenly we have this fear of a dog or fear of anything. It could be fear of anything, but it's always related to some experience somewhere in childhood, and it's very rarely that I don't think any evidence is there to suggest in any way, shape or form that it's genetic. It's all to do with sort of childhood experiences or experiences of being bitten or attacked by something, and that's what creates the fear. But the great thing, of course, it can be dealt with, it can be transformed, it can be eliminated.
Yeah. How would you go about that though, reversing something where I could give you loads of examples. People who were bitten, attacked, barked, cornered, chased by dogs.
Yeah.
How can you reverse that? I can really empathise with people like that, having been through that.
I can myself, because when I was a young kid myself, actually, I got bitten by an Alsatian. It was in my own local community. Now, fortunately enough, I didn't. It never bothered me, but I would still be very in my own mind. I'd still be very aware that if I saw that type of dog, it still triggers that memory. But it's all there are two ways you deal with it, right? First, you have to control or learn to cope with the fear itself and the anxiety itself around that. And then secondly, you have to engage in some form of process that helps you to transform that. So whether it's fear of getting into a lift, fear of flying, fear of a dog, all of these fears are dealt with in two ways, as I said. One, you've got to cope with the stress, the anxiety associated with the fear, and then to engage in some process, whether it be making your way onto that lift, being helped onto it, making your way onto that plane, making your way, or engaging in maybe starting with a smaller animal and then bringing up and developing the confidence and transforming that fear. It is hard work. It is terrible. I know some people go crazy with it. But ultimately, people want to deal with those fears, Neil. That's the two things they have to do. First, cope with the stress associated with the fear, then engage in a process that transforms the fear. Very simple in that way.
Well, would that be the same so for not just a fear of a dog, but fear of any kind of an animal, fear of heights, fear of a lift, fear of you've also people with fears of open space.
Yeah, absolutely. Recently I was dealing with one of the Atomic Kitten, for example, the group. They're coming back, and I was dealing with one of them, who has a fear of flying, and the whole thing is about. A lot of it. You have to understand, fear comes from lack of control. So the thing about it is this: that if
the flying is a fear of crashing, yeah.
Well, you see, it is. But if you go back into the personality of that person, what I have found is that when you're sitting in a plane, you're not in control. Somebody else is at the helm, and so you're there at sort of being guided and controlled by somebody else. Now, if you take the situation with a dog, you feel you're not in control of the situation. You don't know how to confront the situation because you're not in control. So the key to transforming fears of anything is by, taking on the process of engaging in control, trying to control the situation. And if we can teach people to take control of the situation by transforming that fear, then that's the key to it, and I've seen this working for anything, no matter what type of fear it is. But look, for some people, it's terrifying. Some people go into shock absolute shock, and not just from the fear itself. They go into absolute shock. They have neurohormonal reaction. But you've got to understand one very important thing that's very rarely understood about particularly animals, Neil, is this: that even people talk about your fear or my fear of a dog, but the animal has a fear as well. So animals have phobias. So animals have phobias of people. You take a dog that's mistreated, they're very fearful of people. So, when you put both fears together, when you put both negatives together, so someone has a fear of a dog or fear of a cat or fear, when you put both negatives together in the context of an animal we're talking about now, then you have a reaction from the animal. So the automatic reaction from the animal is to attack.
But that's if the animal is cornered or it feels threatened. But in the case of the one we were referring to in the UK, young girl, 14 years old, eating a meat pie, attacked by 5 dogs. they attacked. Like, they weren't defending their patch or feeling threatened.
Yeah, and you see, the thing is, when you have, I mean, when you look at that case, I don't know if it came from just the fear of the animals, but I think it's horrendous to think that anybody would be allowed to have these dogs. And I work a lot in the UK. I mean, I don't see this much here at all in Ireland, but I work a lot in the UK, and you see people walking down the streets with these animals, and they see them as a status symbol, and they kind of nearly breed them to be that type of animal. And it's terrible to think that this amount of dogs can be left in an enclosed environment where they're not taken out. So, obviously, when for whatever reason, and in a pack, and I heard a lady talking in the news about that last night, if you have these animals in a pack, then they're liable to react and behave in this way. If they're separated, they're not. So, there's lots of issues around that, and I think it's absolutely horrendous.
But there have been cases where individual dogs of the dangerous dog breed list have attacked on their own in isolation. They don't need to be.
Oh, they don't. You're right. I just, the one thing I can't figure out for the life of me is how anybody would leave, and I've said to my family, and one of them have dogs like that, and the thing is, I cannot understand for the life of me how anybody would leave even a child near that, near an animal like that. I just, for me personally, I would never trust. I mean, I have a little small dog at home, a Pomeranian, very friendly, very trustworthy, but when you have, I think you look at the breed, you look at the personality of the dog, and I mean, you have got to look at the risks that you're taking, and it's always about being precautious around those animals. But certainly, it's horrendous what happened there and in the UK, and it would be very sad if somebody wasn't held accountable.
Yeah, I will have to see what happens in that regard, and many others besides. But from the point of view of people listening and texting and on the air this morning, one woman in particular just before 10 o'clock there who literally, I've spoken to people in the past who are trapped in their own homes, but that's because they have a fear of the outdoors. Is that agoraphobia?
Yeah.
But this morning, this was a woman who cannot go outside her front door until she is absolutely sure that there are no dogs. She can't walk in public. She can't go into the park. She can only go to her car. I mean, that's she's surrendering her life, really.
Well, she is, you see, and like for that lady, you've got it's the two. I always go back to the two ways of looking at this. One, you've got to deal with that anxiety first, because that anxiety is exacerbating a problem. So she finds herself going back into that kind of cocoon. Well, I'm secure within my own home, or I'm secure within the car. But there has to come a time, if this lady wants to confront this issue, where she's going to have to be brought into that environment where these animals are, and to at least try to transform the fear. Because if she does that, at least she can move forward. But if she just stays the way she is, she's always going to live that life, and she's going to become a prisoner in her own home, because she has that consciousness, she has that belief, she has that awareness that for whatever reason, and unless you get to the root cause, I guarantee if you sat down with that lady and talked to her, or if you got her on air and talked with her about why it is she feels the way she feels about the dog, you'd find that at a much deeper level there's something just not right, something going on. Whether it's something...
Would that be hypnosis or something?
Pardon?
Would that be hypnosis if she couldn't remember, or what?
Well, no. I mean, you just have to deal with the fear. What does the fear bring up? What type of feelings do they have? So if fear can be measured in different ways. So you've got to look at the anxiety. You've got to look at why the fear is there. What does she fear the dog will do? Is it the attack? Is it biting? Where? So you've got to try and break it all down, and then try in some way to analyze it for her and give her the skills to help her to first deal with it, and then to, as I said, to get involved in some. I'm not sure anybody in Ireland or any organisation in Ireland that gets people involved where they take them out, engaging with small animals, small dogs, and get them to at least cope with that fear. So at least she can get out of the house and feel that she's okay.
So it involves the introduction and a kind of a one-on-one introduction with the thing that scares you, whether it's a dog or a rat or a mouse or a lift or an airplane.
Correct. It's the only thing. It's like a spider. It's like anything. These are little small things, but for whatever reason, something triggers a fear. It could be something that that we, as I said, as a child, we're all brought up as children to believe that this, that, and the other, but animals. Now, to me, I wouldn't, necessarily fear. I just love animals. But the thing is that you'd always have that caution in your mind, because you're told that this type of thing could cause problems. And some people that embeds themselves. So if I could just kind of move it on a little bit, for example, it's like a child for example, in school that's told their, fat, ugly child at the age of 4 or 5, and suddenly at the age of 15 or 16 are anorexic because they believe that. So what we do is we take on what we're hearing. We're we're digesting on a continuous basis, you see, Neil, what we're being told. So the only way to confront that is that deal with the stress of the fear first, and then you have to engage in what it is. You have to confront what you fear. And I'm not sure, as I said, if there is an organisation that takes people out, that gets them involved with friendly little dogs, small ones, starting at that, getting in the same environment, then moving it up another step to maybe going close to them, then maybe, rubbing them, then, maybe taking them for a walk, and kind of engaging in that type of process that in some way helps them to transform the fear.
Yeah, you talk about fear and you talk about stress and anxiety, and of course that's very relevant in other ways at the moment, and that is to do with certainly Leaving Cert students who are on Easter break now. Many of them will be cramming the books and going to revision, revise and grind classes. The pressure's on now, isn't it? And the stress and the anxiety.
It is, Neil. It is, Neil. And I mean, we as you know, we're doing something in the Silver Springs on the 7th of April for a morning, bringing parents and students together to help them to deal with the stress and the anxiety. And, ultimately, if you're stressed in any way, shape or form, it inhibits your ability to function normally. And these children who are now, getting closer and closer are getting anxious. They're under pressure from parents. They're under pressure from, social media. They're under pressure, as we talked about, from many different angles. And if they don't learn to deal with that, then it affects their ability to function, and it affects them in getting their points, which is ultimately what they want to get to achieve, what they want to achieve, and get the college that they need to get to.
Yeah, it's a shame because you talk about there's the pressure and the stress of the learning and the exams and everything, but there's all of those added ones. There's always been pressure from parents, hasn't there? Because the parents want best for their children, but inadvertently, unbeknownst to themselves, they're putting unbelievable stress and anxiety into the child.
Yeah, and I would say to parents, no problem, put the pressure on your child, and I would say to the student, take the pressure on, but understand how that pressure is. If that pressure becomes a distressful situation, then you have problems. So you can have, a negative school environment where the teacher is stressed and wants to achieve the best for the students. The student is stressed, then there's a stressful home environment, and you have that social media situation. So I never mind the
social media would be, how do you mean by that? Like Facebook and Twitter, and this fella's doing better than I am?
And I've, over the years, I've always said to parents and the students that I would see coming in here, I've always said to them, look, if you're studying, cut off social media activity. Cut off social media activity. Focus all your energies in your studies and your revision and all of that. But if you're engaging in some degree of stress or some degree of conflict even within social media, whatever way it is, even slagging, I mean, it affects you see, people are affected in different ways. It depends on whether they're very sensitive or not. But I never mind pressure, provided you have the coping skills to deal with the pressure, and most people don't, and people don't understand what happens. So I believe create a happy home in a sense that the parents and the students or the children are working together to create a stress-free environment so that the learning, the studying, the revision is much, much better. And I would say the same thing, and I would believe in schools that if they took on, some form of skills where they could teach these students on a daily basis to cope, you'd have a far better results within class.
That doesn't happen in the school environment, no?
No, it doesn't, and it wouldn't take an awful lot, to do it. I mean, I was in America now, for example. One of I think it's Tim Ryan is his name. He's a senator, and he's brought it into Capitol Hill. But what he's done is he's actually brought it into schools, and recently I saw the research on it. And the students, the behaviour, the focus, the concentration, the results.
What are you talking about? Like 10 minutes meditation or a yoga class or something?
What they do is it's like a meditation. It's where they get children to focus ways to release stress, through breathing, through visualization, things like that. And even nutrition, because nutrition plays a major role. If you're going in to do an exam, for example, this morning, and you just on the way and you grab a can of Coke, well, that's fine. You're getting a massive boost of sugar, but your pancreas then secretes a high level of insulin to break it down. And suddenly now your moods are changing. Your concentration is now affected, your energy levels. And then you have to try and face into something in the afternoon. So even nutrition, Neil, plays such
That's a super point, actually, because you see kids these days, teenagers, swilling on the high-energy drinks, whether it started out with Red Bull, but now there's a dozen different types. Are you saying that they could be detrimental to somebody who needs focus?
Absolutely detrimental. Absolutely detrimental.
And they take them to get focus, they think?
Yeah. No, well, what they do, they take them to keep their energy levels up. But the problem is 70% of your brain is fat. These stimulants, full of sugars, are saturated fat. When you get those into your body has to produce insulin to break that down. What happens is within 15 to 20 minutes or less, you are going to be much tireder. Your brain function is automatically affected.
Can I ask you then, you see them with the big sausage rolls then and the fast food and the chipper deals, the $1.99 for all of this stuff, deep fried food. Is that fuel for the body, or is it actually
It's not fuel for the body.
No?
If you were to put that out in the ground, the way I often say to people, if you threw a Mars bar out in the ground there, would it grow? Well, it wouldn't. It would just decay. When you take food into your body that's lifeless, then you have to expect to be lifeless. But you see, we take it in for the sugar hit, because we're not absorbing.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about Mars bars and chocolates and all these kind of things. I'd be talking about the kind of that you see it in the city, the lunch diet that many students have. It's very, very fast food.
Terrible. Well, you see, there's two
But they
issues.
buy it because the weather is cold, they want to bulk up, they want to get warm, and they want to get satisfied.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's just a matter of changing the way our society thinks. I mean, I think we all know now the evidence is there to show, for example, if, white bread, for example, is full of gluten. So if you're not converting gluten properly, then it converts to morphine in your body, and that gives you a very foggy type brain. So lots of students might identify that, kind of this foggy head, this foggy brain, this can't concentration. 90% of that is down to gluten, and that's absolutely in everything. So
You mean people become lackluster, they don't develop their personality, they don't seem bubbly, effervescent, outgoing?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, it's just so important that if you really want, if I would say to parents and I would say to students, even teachers listen to this, if you want to get the best, now is your time to prepare. Prepare by, having the coping skills to the stress. Yes, have the pressures and want to achieve and be that number one person if you want to be. But look at the implications to your body. If you want to drive a Formula One car, well, you can't put diesel into it. You've got to feed it the right food. You've got to get it serviced properly. You've got to get the right rest. So rest, visualization, various forms of meditation, breathing techniques, right nutrition, and maximize your brain potential. That's the key. And if you can maximize, that can be the difference between, your college position or not.
Okay. We'll talk again in a week or 10 days just to update people and keep them focused as we head into the exams. But best of luck with everything in the interim. You're in the Springs on Sunday week, April 7th from 9:30 a.m. And you'll be teaching a lot of those techniques, actually, is the word I suppose I should use, from the point of view of the brain, the body, the food, the energy levels, visualization techniques, breathing techniques, and how the family can stay calm.
Correct.
Good stuff. All right. Take care for now, Michael. Much obliged. Thanks for taking the call. You can get in touch directly at www.justimagine.ie, or if you want further details as to what Michael is doing in general and indeed for that seminar on Sunday week, call 065 684 1844. Please don't call me. I'll give out the number before we finish again this morning. 065 684 1844. Check out www.justimagine.ie. I'm a huge believer, actually, and this is just personally, I'm a huge believer that you are what you eat, more so than ever in the last, say, 3 to 5 years, working with Michael and doing things with Tony Martin and working in the gym and going every morning. And some mornings are very cold at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's to do, I probably should do more aerobic work, really. As opposed to, working on the body and weights and certain stuff like that. But it's all very vital. But I think the food, certainly the food that we eat. I was watching, you're mad into these things, actually, just ahead of the break. I worry about what kids eat. I really do. And the more cabinets that I see when I go to Dunn's and Tesco full of the stuff, it's always beautifully packaged and brightly packaged and boxed and everything. It's as cheap as chips, if you'll pardon the pun. But you wouldn't feed it, as we used to say years ago. You wouldn't feed it to a dog. We feed our dog better. We take more time. But my point is, it's just so convenient now. And I watched a show the other night, which they set up cameras, right, all over this fast food chicken shop. Did you see it?
I didn't. No. Surprisingly, it sounds like my kind of show.
Did you see it?
I did, actually. The fried chicken shop. Yeah, I did.
I couldn't get to the end of it. I got so depressed looking at it.
It is. But you're also, not only you're seeing people eating bad food, but you're also seeing them very drunk.
Very drunk are terribly misfortunate people. 9 out of 10 times grossly overweight. Do you know what I mean?
It was
awful bad.
People who actually had to work there. I mean, they were working. The poor guys who had to work there were going to college during the day, working all night till 6 o'clock, and then one of them had a 1.5 hour commute home. After it.
But did you look at the caliber of the punter? I don't mean to be disrespectful there, but the grace of God go all of us. But they didn't have a whole lot to say, really. They weren't all that. He talks of a foggy brain there.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. They kind of had foggy brains.
But I suppose the whole concept, I eat because I'm depressed because I eat, it's a vicious circle, as well. So I'm sure they're hardly that happy that they're... But
I can understand why the guys who were going in there were locked, were after loads. That's great. As long as they're not fighting and they're going in. After a great night, some of them... Well, that's my point. Some of them did fight, but others didn't. One or two. You remember the guy who was fairly drunk and he asked, "Did he have to book a table?"
At a chipper.
He was funny.
Not a good show, actually.
Or he said to him, what end of the rap do I start from?
Starting tonight, actually, Neil, I don't know if you've ever seen a Secret Eaters. If people are wondering why am I fat or overweight, why don't I lose weight, there's a great show on Channel 4 starting again tonight called Secret Eaters, where they secretly record people and their eating habits. And it's just funny to see how deluded lots of people are, how in denial lots of people are when they see video footage of how much they actually do eat during the day. It's fascinating.
Yeah. But the opposite can be said as well, because I think you, Colm, and people like you you've only one life, and you're eating rabbit food or you're not eating at all. You're up at 6 a.m. He's constantly running. You're constantly in the gym or not eating or starving yourselves from the nice. You only have one life, so what are you doing? Are you going to be extremely healthy for the rest of your life so that you die healthy?
No, I don't.
So
I'd have treats. I'd have nice meals.
I never see you eating chocolate.
No, we just don't eat. We wouldn't eat chocolate or crisps or junk or crap.
That's what life is for. Food is such a pleasure.
But I would eat proper dinners, and I would have a treat. Like I bought a big bag of hot cross buns yesterday, and I'd eat those on the weekend.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe you're more disciplined than I, but I just think I see a lot of people, especially women as well, who are just obsessed with weight, with how they look, with
then you'll
going
get
to the
fat.
gym.
Obsessive behaviour will not help you in any way, shape or form. And I don't think maybe I am obsessive.
I think you are. I think you need to enjoy life. I think if a cake comes your way, eat it. You know what I mean?
But I think you can, but just not all the time.
Not all the time.
I think that's a great epitaph.